What the fuck you doing in there, you prick?
A Pizzaverse Studios production. Written by Bambi Palermo. Narrated by Vincent DiPrio. Alan Dorfman, the banker behind the mob's Las Vegas empire. The man Casino ignored. You ever sit there watching Casino, right? Scorsese giving you 3 hours of neon, money, and guys getting buried in cornfields, and you think you've seen the whole story. Nah. You saw the flash. You didn't see the engine. Martin Scorsese spent 3 hours showing you how the mob ran Las Vegas, but he buried the most important guy in the entire operation like yesterday's garbage. The man who funded it. The man who signed off on $160 million in Teamsters pension money, working-class retirement cash, turned into casino bankroll. A decorated United States Marine. A Silver Star recipient from one of the bloodiest battles in American history. And the financial brain behind the Chicago outfit's Vegas empire. His name was Alan Dorfman. In Casino, he gets 5 minutes, fake name, background character. In real life, this guy was the pipeline. Without him, no loans. No loans, no casinos. No casinos, no skim. End of story. But here's where it gets interesting. Because when the FBI finally locked onto him, they didn't just build a case. They built a machine. Dozens of agents. 21 tapped phone lines. Over 2,000 reels of recorded conversations. At the time, it was the most elaborate wiretap operation in FBI history. They called it Operation Pendorf. And when they finally had him, the Chicago outfit did something they almost never do. They didn't wait. They didn't finesse it. They didn't hide it. They handled it. In broad daylight. But to understand why they panicked like that, you gotta go back. Way back. Because Alan Dorfman didn't start as some wise guy accountant in a back room smoking cigars. Nah. He started as something the mob doesn't usually produce. A war hero. Iwo Jima to the inner circle. Alan Dorfman was born in Detroit, 1923. Working-class Jewish family. No silver spoon, no mob dynasty waiting for him. Just another kid coming up in America before everything went sideways. He grew up on the west side of Chicago, went to Marshall High School, regular life, nothing flashy. Then the world exploded. World War II. And Dorfman didn't duck it. He enlisted in the United States Marines. Not some cushy posting either. Combat. Real combat. The kind that breaks men. Iwo Jima. A volcanic island fortress defended by over 20,000 Japanese soldiers, dug into tunnels and concrete bunkers like ghosts underground. Nearly 7,000 Marines killed. This wasn't a battle. This was a meat grinder. And Alan Dorfman walked into it. He didn't just survive. He stood out. He earned the Silver Star, third highest combat decoration in the United States. That means one thing. He didn't just do his job. He did something above and beyond while everything around him was falling apart. Think about that for a second. The guy Scorsese turned into a background character was a decorated combat marine who survived one of the most brutal battles in modern history. After the war, he comes home. Chicago. Enters the University of Illinois. Becomes a physical education teacher. $4,000 a year. That's the life, right? War hero, gym teacher, quiet, respectable. End credits. Yeah. That's not how this story goes. Because Alan Dorfman had something a lot more powerful than a degree. He had a connection. A stepfather. The door opens. His name was Paul Red Dorfman. And this is where the whole thing flips. Red Dorfman ran the Chicago Waste Handlers Union. On paper, labor. In reality, a direct pipeline into the Chicago outfit. Congressional investigators would later call him exactly what he was. The link between the Teamsters Union and organized crime. And Red didn't just sit around, he made moves, big ones. In 1949, he forms a relationship with a rising name out of Detroit, Jimmy Hoffa. Yeah, that Hoffa. Red introduces Hoffa to Chicago outfit figures, opens doors, makes connections, and in return, Hoffa hands over something worth more than cash. Control. He steers the Teamsters insurance business into a new agency, run by Red's wife, Rose, and his stepson, Alan Dorfman. Just like that, a gym teacher becomes a power broker. Alan goes from making $4,000 a year to running the union insurance agency, processing claims for Teamsters across the entire country. Within 5 years, millionaire. But the insurance business? That was just the appetizer. The real prize was sitting right behind it, waiting. The Teamsters Central States Pension Fund. This wasn't some retirement account. This was a war chest. Hundreds of thousands of workers, truck drivers, warehouse guys, union labor, all their futures, sitting in one giant pool of money. And Alan Dorfman got his hands on the faucet. By the late 1950s, he's approving loans out of Chicago. And the people lining up? They ain't building schools. They ain't opening hospitals. They're mob-connected developers, casino operators, Vegas expansion guys, the kind of people who don't ask twice where the money comes from. And then comes the number that changes everything. $160 million. A loan package to the Argent Corporation, owners of multiple Las Vegas casinos, including one little place that becomes the center of everything, the Stardust. You remember it from Casino, only they called it the Tangiers. Nice touch. Wrong focus. Because while guys like Frank Lefty Rosenthal, Tony the Ant Spilotro, were running the show on the ground. The money? The real power? It flowed through one man, Alan Dorfman. He didn't run the skim. He didn't crack heads. He didn't threaten nobody. He made it possible. And for a long time, that made him untouchable, until it didn't. The skim machine. You don't just build a mob empire on muscle. Muscle gets you respect. Fear gets you control. But money? Money builds kingdoms. By the early 1960s, Las Vegas wasn't just a desert town anymore. It was a gold mine. And every wise guy from Chicago to Kansas City to New York wanted a piece of it. But here's the problem. Casinos don't build themselves. You need capital. Massive capital. Hotels. Gaming floors. Showrooms. Staff. Licensing. You're talking millions and millions of dollars before a single chip hits a table. And most of the guys looking to run these joints, they weren't exactly walking into Chase Bank asking for a loan. That's where Alan Dorfman came in. See, Dorfman wasn't a street guy. He wasn't out there breaking legs or collecting envelopes. He was something way more dangerous. He was legitimate enough to move money, and connected enough to know where it should go. The Teamsters Central States Pension Fund, that was the pipeline. Working class guys, truck drivers, laborers, putting their money in for retirement. Every paycheck, every mile on the road, all of it pooling into one massive fund. And Dorfman, he controlled where it went. Now picture this. You're a casino developer in Las Vegas. You got mob backing. You got land. You got ambition. But you ain't got the cash to build. So what do? You go to Dorfman. And if you're connected, if you're vouched for, if you're part of the network, you don't just get a loan. You get a lifeline. That's exactly what happened with the Argent Corporation. Argent wasn't just some random company. It was a front. A corporate shell backed by the Chicago outfit and Kansas City interests. And through Dorfman, they secured around $160 million in pension fund loans. Let me say that again so it sinks in. $160 million from working-class retirement funds, straight into mob-controlled casinos. And at the center of it all, the Stardust Resort and Casino. This place wasn't just another casino. This was the crown jewel. Biggest sports book in the world at the time. Massive floor. Constant action. Cash flow like a river that never stops. And buried inside that operation, the thing that made everybody rich. The skim. Now, if you never heard the term before, let me break it down nice and simple. Casinos report earnings. They pay taxes on what they report. So what happens if you take money before it ever gets reported? That money doesn't exist. Not to the IRS. Not to regulators. Not to anybody. It gets skimmed. At the Stardust, this wasn't some small-time hustle. This was industrial. Cash gets pulled straight out to the count room. Before records. Before audits. Before oversight. Stuffed into envelopes. Packed into suitcases. Moved quietly. From Vegas. Back to Chicago. Back to Kansas City. Back to the bosses. And the beautiful part? On paper, everything looked legit. The casinos showed profits. Taxes got paid on the reported money. Investors stayed happy. Meanwhile, millions were disappearing into thin air. And none of it happens without funding. No funding. No casino. No casino. No skim. So while guys like Frank Lefty Rosenthal ran operations, Tony Spilotro enforced the outfit's muscle. Alan Dorfman. He was the guy who made sure the lights turned on in the first place. He was the banker. The gatekeeper. The guy who decided who got a piece of Vegas and who didn't. And because of that, he lived like it. Private jets. High-end suits. Tanned year-round. Moving between Chicago, Vegas, and political circles like he owned all three. He wasn't hiding. He was operating in plain sight. Politicians knew him. Businessmen respected him. Union leaders depended on him. And mob guys, they needed him. Because here's the truth nobody says out loud. You can replace a hitter. You can replace a capo. Hell, you can replace a boss. But a guy who knows how to move hundreds of millions of dollars cleanly through dirty channels, that guy, he's rare. That guy becomes indispensable. And for years, that's exactly what Alan Dorfman was. But here's the thing about being indispensable in that world. It ain't permanent. Because the second you become a risk instead of an asset, the second your name starts showing up in indictments, the second the government starts circling, all that value turns into a problem. And problems, they get solved. Sometimes quietly. Sometimes not so quietly. And coming up next, the first crack in the armor. The first indictment. And the first man who tried to talk and didn't live long enough to finish the sentence. The indictment and the factory killing. You build something like this, money flowing, Vegas humming, everybody eating, you start to think it's untouchable. That's the first mistake. By the early 1970s, the federal government wasn't sleeping anymore. They were watching. Quiet. Patient. Because here's the thing about guys like Dorfman. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like a businessman. Suit, smile, connections. The kind of guy who could sit in a boardroom in the morning and be tied to a mob loan by lunch. But the feds? They started pulling threads. And once they started, the whole thing began to unravel. February 1974. That's when it hit. Alan Dorfman gets indicted. Not alone either. They brought in names that meant something. Joey the Clown Lombardo, Tony the Ant Spilotro, Erwin Weiner, bail bondsman connected everywhere. The charge? Fraud. A scheme involving about $1.4 million in pension fund loans, funneled into a plastics company down in Deming, New Mexico. Now on paper, it's just another shady deal. Bad loans. Misused funds. But to the government? This was the opening. The first real shot at the financial side of the outfit. And here's where it gets interesting. Because the feds didn't just have paperwork. They had something better. They had a witness. A guy named Daniel Seifert. Now Seifert wasn't some outsider. He was in it. Partner in the deal. Knew how the money moved. Knew who signed off. Knew who got paid. And most important, he was ready to talk. See, that's the thing that scares guys like Dorfman more than anything. Not cops. Not indictments. Talkers. Because once somebody starts talking, the whole house starts shaking. Seifert was gonna take the stand. Lay it all out. Names, numbers, connections. And if he did, this wasn't just gonna be a fraud case anymore. This was gonna turn into something bigger. A map. A map of how mob money moved through legitimate systems. And the outfit? They don't let maps get drawn. September 27th, 1974. Bensonville, Illinois. Seifert's plastics factory. It's a normal day. Work's going. Machines humming. Family inside. Then the door blows open. Masked gunmen. No hesitation. No conversation. They grab his wife, Emma. They grab his kid, 4 years old. Little boy named Joe. They shove them into a bathroom, lock the door, and then they go looking for Seifert. He tries to run. Doesn't matter. They chase him through his own factory, his own business, the place he built. And then they catch him. Shotgun. Point blank. They blow him away. Execution. Clean. Fast. Message sent. And just like that, the government's witness. Gone. Now think about that. This wasn't some back alley hit. This wasn't some quiet disappearance. This was a man murdered in his own business, in front of his family, in broad daylight. Why? Because he was gonna talk. And after that, everything changed. The case collapsed. Without Seifert, the government didn't have the same weight, didn't have the same leverage, didn't have the story laid out the way they needed it. Joey Lombardo. Charges gone. The rest? Acquitted. Dismissed. Slipped right through. And Alan Dorfman walked like nothing ever happened. Now officially. At the time, no one was convicted for that murder. No one charged. No one tied directly. But everybody knew. You don't kill a cooperating witness like that without approval, without structure, without somebody at the top saying, "Handle it." And that's exactly what this was. Not just a killing, a warning. You talk, you die. Your family watches. That's the rule. And for a while, it worked. The outfit stayed protected. Dorfman stayed in business. The money kept moving. Vegas kept printing. But here's the thing about fear. It buys you time. It doesn't stop the storm. Because while the outfit was celebrating that case falling apart, the FBI was learning something. They realized you can't build a case like this on witnesses. Witnesses get killed. So they changed the game. No more relying on guys like Seifert. No more hoping somebody flips. They were gonna build a case that nobody could silence. No witnesses. No weak links. Just voices. Recorded. Captured. Permanent. And the man they were about to target was the same guy who just walked away clean, Alan Dorfman. Operation Pendorf. After Seifert gets blown away, the FBI finally gets it. You don't beat the outfit with witnesses. Witnesses get buried. You want to take down a machine like this? You don't rely on people. You rely on proof that can't be scared. So they changed the strategy. No more waiting. No more hoping somebody flips. They go straight at the source. Alan Dorfman. And what they build next wasn't just an investigation. It was a full-scale infiltration. They called it Operation Pendorf. Now that name ain't random. It literally stood for penetration of Alan Dorfman. Yeah, real subtle, right? But don't let the name fool you. What they were about to do was one of the most aggressive surveillance operations the FBI had ever attempted at the time. We're talking dozens of agents, coordinated teams, long-term covert planning, and one guy in particular who took it personal. FBI agent Pete Wax. Now this guy, he wasn't sitting behind a desk. He was the one going in. Night after night. He physically broke into Dorfman's office. Let that sink in. This wasn't legal paperwork and court orders. This was old-school spycraft. Lock-picked. Alarm systems bypassed. Dark offices. Flashlights. Silence. One mistake. Whole case blown. Career over. Maybe worse. But they kept going back. Again. And again. And again. Why? Because they weren't just planting one bug. They were building a web. Microphones inside the amalgamated insurance agency. Hidden transmitters. Voice-activated devices. And then they went bigger. They tapped the phones. Not one line. Not two. 21 separate phone lines. Office. Home. Connections. Everything. By the time they were done, there was nowhere Alan Dorfman could talk without the FBI listening. And this wasn't a quick hit. This went on for 14 months. Over a year of listening. Recording. Cataloging. And what they got? Over 2,000 reels of tape. Think about that. Every conversation. Every deal. Every casual comment. Every slip. Captured. Stored. Permanent. This is what made Operation Pendorf different. You can kill a witness. You can intimidate a jury. You can lean on a politician. But you can't scare a tape recorder. And the outfit? They didn't realize it yet. But they were already finished. Because what those tapes captured wasn't just small talk. It was the whole operation. Dorfman on the phone with Teamsters President Roy Lee Williams. Discussing deals. Discussing influence. Discussing power. Dorfman talking with Joey Lombardo. The same guy who played the clown in public. Now speaking like a financial strategist behind closed doors. Reading the Wall Street Journal. Breaking down numbers. Moving money like a corporate executive. That right there. That shocked the FBI. Because Lombardo wasn't just muscle. He understood the business. And together with Dorfman, they weren't just criminals. They were running a system. A system that reached politics, labor unions, casinos, national industries. And then came the big one. The tapes captured a bribery plot. A sitting United States Senator, Howard Cannon, Nevada, The plan? Offer him a sweetheart real estate deal. Union-owned property in Vegas. Cheap, easy, under the table. In exchange, he blocks a trucking deregulation bill. Now why does that matter? Because deregulation would have weakened the Teamsters' grip on the industry. And if the Teamsters lose power, so does the outfit. So this wasn't just corruption. This was national-level influence. And the FBI had it all. On tape. But it didn't stop there. They caught threats. Real ones. Talk of killing a Las Vegas casino owner over a debt. They caught discussions about gambling operations, pornography networks, financial manipulation across multiple states. They even caught conversations about who should become the next president of the Teamsters Union. Think about that. Organized crime. Discussing leadership of a major American labor union. Like it's a boardroom appointment. Because to them, it was. By the time the FBI sat back and reviewed everything, they realized something. They didn't just have a case against Dorfman. They had a case against the entire structure, top to bottom. This wasn't about one guy anymore. This was the Chicago outfit's financial blueprint. The verdict and the clock. You can run from witnesses. You can scare a jury. You can lean on people, grease palms, make problems disappear. You can't outrun your own voice. After Operation Pendorf, the FBI wasn't guessing anymore. They weren't building theories. They had it. On tape. And now, it was time to bring it into the light. Federal courtroom, Chicago, early 1980s. This wasn't just another mob trial. This was a statement. Because for the first time, the government wasn't relying on some shaky witness hoping he lives long enough to testify. They had recordings. Clear. Direct. Damning. Over 2,000 reels of conversations. And out of that mountain of tape, they picked the ones that would hurt the most. 51 recordings. That's what the jury heard. 51 pieces of a puzzle that all pointed in one direction. Guilty. On those tapes, you hear it all. Alan Dorfman. Cool, controlled, confident. Talking business like it's just another day at the office. Except the business is bribing a United States senator, manipulating union power, protecting mob-controlled financial pipelines. Right there in his own words. And he wasn't alone. You got Roy Lee Williams, president of the Teamsters. Joey the Clown Lombardo, outfit power player. All on tape. All tied together. All exposed. And the centerpiece. The plot to bribe Senator Howard Cannon. The deal was simple. They offer him a sweetheart real estate opportunity. Union-owned land in Las Vegas, underpriced, easy money. In exchange, He blocks legislation. A trucking deregulation bill that would have weakened the Teamsters' control over the industry. This wasn't street crime. This wasn't some envelope under the table. This was high-level corruption. The kind that reaches into Washington and bends policy. And now, the jury's hearing it straight from the source. No spin. No interpretation. Just voices. And once those voices start playing, there's no one hearing it. You can feel it in the courtroom, the shift, because everybody in that room knows this ain't gonna end well. December 15th, 1982. The verdict comes down. Guilty. Alan Dorfman. Roy Williams. Joey Lombardo. All convicted of conspiracy to bribe a United States senator. And just like that, the most untouchable financial operator in the Chicago outfit becomes a convicted felon. Now here's where it gets real. Dorfman is 60 years old. And the charges he's facing? Up to 55 years in federal prison. Let me translate that for you nice and simple. That ain't a sentence. That's a death certificate. You go in at 60 with that kind of time, you don't come out. Ever. But for the moment, he's not in a cell yet. He's released on $5 million bail, waiting for sentencing. Walking around. Breathing. Eating. Sleeping in his own bed. But don't get it twisted. This ain't freedom. This is the quiet part before the storm. Because now, everything changes. Before the conviction, Dorfman was an asset. After the conviction, he's a liability. And not just any liability. The worst kind. Because Alan Dorfman knows everything. He knows where the money went. Who approved what? Which politicians were bought? Which unions were compromised? How the Vegas scheme actually worked. From the first dollar pulled out of the Stardust count room to the last envelope that landed back in Chicago. He's the blueprint. And now, he's facing a lifetime behind bars. So what happens next? You start thinking. You start calculating. You start asking yourself the question every guy in his position eventually asks. Do I go down with this thing? Or do I save myself? Because the government? They're not stupid. They know what they got. And they know what he's worth. A guy like Dorfman flipping? That's not a case. That's a collapse. Top bosses, union leadership, political connections, all exposed. And the outfit? They know it too. That's the problem. See, before, they needed him. Now, he's dangerous. And here's the thing about that life. Once you become dangerous, you don't get demoted. You don't get sidelined. You get handled. Now add one more layer to this. Because the conviction, that's not the only thing closing in on him. Dorfman's got more cases coming. Another trial scheduled in Chicago. And just 1 week before everything ends, he gets indicted again. San Francisco. Trying to loot union funds out there, too. On top of that, the Department of Labor is moving to freeze his assets. So now picture it. Every direction he turns, pressure. Federal cases. Financial ruin. Prison time. There's only one way out of that kind of corner. You cooperate. You talk. And once that thought enters the equation, it becomes a countdown. Because the outfit's looking at him now, not as a banker, not as a partner, but as a man who might open his mouth. And if he does, everything falls. A veteran Chicago reporter, John Drummond, said it best. At 60 years old, he can't do hard time. He's going to talk. And once that belief sets in, the decision's already made. Not by Dorfman. By the people above him. So now, there's only one question left. Not if, but when. And where. Because what happens next? The Chicago outfit does something they almost never do. They don't wait. They don't hide. They make it loud. Public. Unmistakable. The Purple Hotel hit. By January 1983. Alan Dorfman wasn't a powerful man anymore. He was a problem. Convicted. Facing decades in prison. Hit with new indictments. Assets about to get frozen. And worst of all, he knew too much. At 60 years old, staring at a lifetime behind bars, the outfit didn't see a loyal soldier anymore. They saw a man with every reason to talk. And in that world, that's all it takes. 3 days. That's how much time he had left. January 20th, 1983. Cold morning in suburban Chicago. Lincolnwood. Northwest side. Dorfman gets in his car like any other day. No panic. No security detail. No sense that the clock just about ran out. Riding with him? A familiar name. Irwin Weiner. Same guy indicted with him back in '74. Same guy with connections all over the city. Same guy who always seemed to be around. They make a stop first. First National Bank of Lincolnwood. Routine business. Money moves. Nothing unusual. Then they head over to lunch. The Hyatt House Hotel, corner of Toohey and Lincoln. Locals knew it by a different name. The Purple Hotel. Big, flashy place for the time. Opened back in 1960. Purple brick exterior, you couldn't miss it. Inside. 2 restaurants. Busy bar. Pool in the summer. Celebrities passing through. The kind of place where business gets done. And nobody asks questions. Dorfman and Weiner pull in. Park the car. Step out. It's quiet. Normal. Cars in the lot. People moving in and out. Middle of the day. They start walking toward the entrance. And that's when it happens. 2 men. Ski masks. Come up from behind. Fast. Clean. No hesitation. One of them shouts, "This is a stick-up." Now that right there, that's for show. Because what happens next? Because what happens next has nothing to do with robbery. The gun comes up. 22 caliber handgun. And before Dorfman can even turn, 7 shots. All into the back of his head. Close range. No warning. No conversation. No chance. He drops face first between parked cars. 8 shell casings scatter across the pavement. And just like that, the most important financial figure in the Chicago outfit's Vegas empire is lying dead in a parking lot. Broad daylight. Witnesses everywhere. Blood pooling under him. Freezing against the January asphalt. Turning into red ice before paramedics even get there. He never had a shot. Now, here's the part that really tells you what this was. Erwin Weiner. Standing right next to him. Doesn't get touched. Not grazed. Not threatened. Not even looked at. The gunmen don't point the weapon at him. They don't say a word to him. They do their job. And they leave. That ain't a robbery. That ain't chaos. That's precision. That's a message. Weiner gets taken in. Questioned for hours. And law enforcement? They start putting it together real fast. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't sloppy. This was arranged. Many believed Weiner set him up. Brought him there. Time. Place. Everything lined up. And the shooters already waiting. Because here's the truth. The outfit didn't have time to be subtle anymore. Dorfman had court coming. More charges piling up. Talk of cooperation hanging in the air. They couldn't risk him getting on a plane. Couldn't risk him sitting down with prosecutors. Couldn't risk one conversation. So they did something they almost never do. They made it public. A hit in the middle of the day. In a busy parking lot. With witnesses everywhere. Why? Because they were out of time. Veteran reporter John Drummond put it plain. Somebody tipped them off. They knew he was about to talk. They had to move. And when the outfit has to move, they don't hesitate. They eliminate the problem. No matter who's watching, no matter how it looks. Alan Dorfman, war hero, millionaire, power broker, the man who bankrolled Las Vegas for the mob, didn't die in some quiet room, didn't disappear. He was executed like a liability, right out in the open. And just like that, the banker was gone. But here's the part they didn't think through. Killing him didn't erase anything. Because all those conversations, all those deals, all those secrets, they were already recorded. And now, there was nobody left to protect. The cleanup and the final irony. And it didn't take long for things to start unraveling. Because first comes the cleanup. Not the legal kind. The internal kind. See, when something like this happens, when a hit goes down this public, there's always loose ends. And loose ends don't get ignored. They get cut. The FBI had their suspicions about who pulled the trigger. Two names kept coming up. Ray Spencer, Leonard Uras. Known outfit guys. Connected. Capable. The kind of men you call when something needs to be handled. Fast. But here's the thing about being a trigger man in that world. You don't retire. And you definitely don't stick around after a hit like that. Within 2 years, both of them are dead. Ray Spencer, found in a motel room in Florida, 1984. Circumstances? Let's just say, not exactly natural. Leonard Uras, shot to death gangland style outside his own laundry business in Chicago, 1985. Just like that. The men suspected of killing Dorfman. Gone. No witnesses. No testimony. No loose threads. That's how the outfit cleans up. Layer after layer. You eliminate the problem. Then you eliminate the people who eliminated the problem. By the time it's done, there's nobody left to talk. Except, there was one thing they couldn't eliminate. The tapes. See, here's where this whole thing flips on its head. Killing Dorfman didn't protect them. It didn't stop the investigation. Didn't weaken the case. Didn't buy them time. If anything, it made things worse. Because now the FBI doesn't have to worry about him flipping. Doesn't have to negotiate. Doesn't have to protect him. Now they can just use what they already got. And what they had was devastating. Those recordings from inside Dorfman's own office. became the backbone of one of the biggest organized crime prosecutions in Chicago history. 3 years later, the hammer drops. Top-level convictions. Joey Doves Ayupa, boss of the Chicago outfit. Jackie Cerrone, underboss. Angelo the Hook La Pietra, high-ranking member. Joey Lombardo, right back in the fire. All taken down. And the irony? It's brutal. Because the very conversations they had, sitting across from Dorfman, planning deals, talking money, making moves, those same conversations are what bury them. The evidence came from the one place they felt safest. His office. The same office they trusted. The same room where they thought they were untouchable. That's what kills them. Not a witness. Not a snitch. Their own voices. And just like that, the era ends. The old Las Vegas, gone. No more mob-controlled casinos. No more skim flowing back through Chicago like a river of cash. Corporate ownership takes over, clean suits, boardrooms, regulated money. The system Dorfman helped build from the ground up, finished. Wiped out. And here's the part that always hits the hardest. They killed him to protect themselves. They rushed the hit. Made it public. Took the risk. Because they thought he was the key. They thought if he talked, everything would collapse. But the truth, everything had already been recorded. They didn't stop the collapse. They just made it louder. And in the end, Alan Dorfman didn't bring down the outfit. The outfit brought down itself. And that right there, that's the part Casino never showed you. The banker who built Vegas. So when you watch Casino, you see the lights. You see the suits. You see the violence. You see guys like Ace Rothstein running the floor. Nicky Santoro breaking bones. Bosses back in Chicago pulling strings. And yeah, that's all real. But it's not the whole story. Because none of that. Alan Dorfman is dead. Parking lot. Daylight. Execution. From the outfit's perspective, problem solved. No trial testimony. No cooperation. No courtroom meltdown where he starts naming names. The guy who knew everything? Silenced. That's how it's supposed to work. You cut out the weak link, and the rest of the chain holds. Except this time, the chain was already broken. Because while Dorfman was still alive, while he was walking around on bail, while they were deciding what to do with him, the FBI had already taken everything they needed. Those 2,000 reels of tape from Operation Pendorf? That wasn't just evidence. That was a blueprint. Every conversation. Every deal. Every moment where these guys forgot to be careful. Captured. Catalogued. Ready. So when Dorfman hit the pavement outside the Purple Hotel, the outfit didn't realize it yet, but they were already finished. Not the Stardust. Not the skim. Not the money flowing out of Las Vegas in suitcases. None of it happens without the banker. Alan Dorfman wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He didn't need to be. He sat in offices, signed papers, approved loans, and with a pen, he moved more power than most guys ever could with a gun. He took working-class pension money and turned it into the engine that built the mob's Las Vegas empire. And for a long time, that made him untouchable. Until the system he helped build started closing in on him. Because in that world, power don't last forever. Eventually, everybody becomes a liability. And when that happens, it don't matter if you're a street guy, a boss, or the man holding the money. You don't retire. You get removed. Alan Dorfman survived Iwo Jima, one of the bloodiest battles in American history. But he didn't survive the machine he helped create. And in the end, the outfit didn't fall because of one man. It fell because of what they all forgot. You can hide money. You can bury bodies. You can silence witnesses. But once the truth gets recorded, there's no outrunning it. If you made it this far, you already know. This ain't just stories. This is how it really went down. This is the side they don't put in the movies. The names they gloss over. The pieces they leave out. But around here, we don't skip details. This is the Pizzaverse. And we don't miss. Like, subscribe, and step inside the Pizzaverse Social Club, where the real stories get told.